Welcome to the Music from the Margins, a concert of music by composers and underrepresented groups that are finally gaining recognition, as sung by CGOA's Voci Choral Group. Thank you for supporting CGOA through your memberships, sponsorships, and generous support in any form. Thank you to our board, volunteers, and performers for sharing their time and energy to bringing you interesting and engaging concerts. If any of you are still wanting more, CGOA's theater group Stages is almost to opening night of Little Shop of Horrors. It opens on April 28th and runs through May 13th. Performances sell out quick and are located at the Bingen Theater, and that is not Bingen, Germany, and you'll learn about that more later. There is also one more jazz collective night on May 19th and the 21st at Hood River Valley High School, and that's African-Cuban fusion. At this time, please silence any screaming children, as well as your cell phones, and let it begin.
Buenas tardes y bienvenidos a Música de los Mártires, un concierto de música de compositores de agrupaciones poco representadas que finalmente están ganando reconocimiento, cantada por el grupo Voci Coral de CGOA. Gracias por apoyar de cualquier forma que sea, a través de su membresía, patrocinios y apoyo generoso. Gracias a nuestra mesa directiva, voluntarios y artistas por compartir su tiempo y energía para brindarles conciertos interesantes. También, si quieren un poquito más, están invitados a la producción de Stages, Little Shop of Horrors, que se va a tomar a cabo en Bingen Theater. Las ventas se venden rápido, entonces ocupa comprar sus boletos, y eso ocurre del 28 de abril hasta el 13 de mayo. También, si están interesados, en la Hood River Valley High School estará el colectivo de jazz, una función de afro-cubano que sea del 19 de mayo al 21 de mayo. Y claro, por favor, silencien sus teléfonos, cualquier los niños que lloran también. Y gracias de nuevo y disfruten de este concierto.
Good afternoon. Our first selection this afternoon is Youth at Sundance. The Youth Sundance, conducted once a year in the middle of summer, is the most important spiritual ceremony of the Western Great Basin Ute people. During this particular ceremony, grudges, misunderstandings, and debts are all forgiven so that no one goes into the new year with negativity. Of Ute and Navajo heritage, Valerie Naranjo transcribed and reworked this particular piece of music, the Youth Sundance, that melody into voice, and Ethan Sperry, who is director of choral activities at Portland State University, arranged this version. Valerie Naranjo regards her voice as her first instrument, but she actually plays 21 different instruments. And over 35 years ago, she studied with a Ghanaian chief who was an expert in the West African jeel, which is an instrument like the xylophone. Because of her acquired expertise on the jeel and her deep respect for the culture, the chief of Ghana actually allowed her to play the jeel in public. She was the first woman, African or non-African, to be allowed to do so. Valerie Naranjo was hired in 1975 by NBC's Saturday Night Live. She was their first musician, and she still retains the only permanent percussive chair in the SNL band. She also arranged music for the 1997 premiere of The Lion King, and she continues to teach West African jeel, drumming, dance, and song at New York University. Listen for Valerie Naranjo's percussive effects in this beautiful piece of music.
Lusitano's Regina Caeli, which is Latin for Queen of Heaven, is a sacred Renaissance piece published in 1551. The words are from an ancient Roman Catholic chant addressing the Virgin Mary and celebrating the resurrection of Jesus. It's traditionally chanted at the end of church services between Easter and Pentecost, towards the period we're in right now. Lusitano was for centuries a marginalized composer whose music has only recently become available to us. A happy ending to a bittersweet tale. He is the first published black composer in history. Lusitano was an Afro-Portuguese composer, priest, and music theorist born around 1520 in Portugal. His father was Portuguese, and it is believed his mother was of African descent. 1551 is the most eventful year in Lusitano's life. He moves to Rome and publishes a book of sacred songs there. He makes a living primarily as a music teacher. There is no record of him being employed as a musician by the Catholic Church. At this time, the church allowed a person of African descent to be a priest, but not a choir director. Also in 1551, Lusitano is drawn into a dispute with Nicola Vicentino, a well-connected Italian composer and music theorist, after Vicentino hears Regina Caeli being performed. The dispute is a serious legalistic affair taking 3 days to complete, with oral and written testimony and a panel of 3 judges drawn from the Sistine Chapel Choir. Basically, Vicentino argues that Lusitano is incorrectly applying accepted principles of composition. Lusitano wins the debate and Vicentino is fined. Vicentino is mightily miffed and can't let this go. In 1551, he publishes a misleading treatise with falsehoods, even changing Lusitano's original testimony from the dispute. He claims that his ideas are correct, Lusitano's are wrong, and that he should have won the dispute. Vicentino's treatise is published, gains traction in the music world, and remains the accepted narrative on the subject for centuries. A few years later, Lusitano converts to Protestantism, marries, and leaves Rome for Germany, where he publishes Protestant music. There is no record of him after 1561. The next 400 years sees the marginalization of Lusitano in music history. In Rome, copies of his treatise on counterpoint and improvisation are found with his name scratched off of it. A brief entry on Lusitano in a mid-18th century publication mentions only his theory work, but none of his compositions or his racial identity. Fast forward to 1977, when a researcher digging deep into Portuguese composers reveals much information that had been obscured for centuries about Lusitano's compositions and identity. Lusitano's big revival comes in 2020. Joseph McHardy, a British conductor, early music specialist, and also a person of mixed European and African ancestry, sees a photo of a sign from a Black Lives Matter rally listing names of black composers chronologically with the words, listen, play, teach. The earliest name on the list is that of Lusitano. McCarty is intrigued. He transcribes Lusitano's music into modern notation, greatly expanding access to his music. Before 2020, only one of Lusitano's works had been recorded. Now there are albums of his music by several groups, and it is performed worldwide.
composer Marcus Garrett is assistant professor of music at the University of Nebraska Glenn Korff School of Music, artistic director of the Omaha Symphonic Chorus, and guest director with choirs throughout the United States. A Virginia native of African American heritage, his PhD in music education, specifically choral conducting, sets him apart from most of his peers. According to a career survey of music educators, only 10% of music teachers in the United States are African American, and only 4% of all music teachers hold a PhD. An avid researcher and composer of choral music, Dr. Garrett's special interests include the choral music of Black composers. The lyrics of this traditional spiritual are based on the book of Matthew. Come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. These lyrics are a dialogue between a servant and his or her Lord. Instead of being told to get up and work, the servant is told to sit down and rest. Overwhelmed to be recognized for hard work done on earth, the servant simply can't sit down when welcomed into the kingdom of heaven.
next piece, Caritas, is a Gregorian chant composed by Hildegard of Bingen, Germany. Bingen, Germany. It might be of interest to know that in 1892, the Suchsdorf family moved from Bingen, Germany, to Washington State. They named their new little town on the Columbia River Bingen, or as we say, Bingen. I think they experienced a familiarity with their old home, surrounded by mountains in the Rhine River Gorge of Germany, a landscape similar to our Columbia River Gorge. Hildegard lived to be 81 years old during the High Middle Ages, which was from the years 1000 to 1300 AD. In Europe, this era was characterized by a rapid population increase and urbanization, causing great social and political changes. At age 14, Hildegard entered the German Benedictine monastery, later becoming an abbess, and was known for her knowledge in many areas. She was a mystic and a visionary, a prolific composer, theologist, and practitioner of medicine, treating illness and diseases with herbs from her garden. It is unusual that during this time any woman was given a voice outside of their home. However, Hildegard and her mentor Jutta, another Benedictine abbess, were exceptions. It is said that Hildegard paved the way for other women to succeed in theology, medicine, and music. In 2012, about 1,000 years after Hildegard's life, Hildegard was canonized a saint for her work in theology and medicine. Saint Hildegard initially learned music by playing a fretless zither, known as the psaltery. Her compositions were highly emotional expressions of her mystical, visionary life. Today, she is respected as one of the most influential medieval composers, as well as one of the earliest Western composers whose music is widely preserved and performed. While her music was rooted in Gregorian chants and inspired by nature, her many compositions included secular music, sacred polyphony, hymns, and chants. This is the English translation of what we're about to sing. Divine love overflows into everything, raised high, highest from the very depths, to surpass constellations, and tender, most tender, toward all creation such that it bestows the kiss of peace on the highest King.
Oh Edward Eslin Cummings, known as E. E. Cummings, was born October 14, 1894, at the end of the Victorian age. He was 20 at the end of the Edwardian era, and during World War I, he volunteered with an American ambulance unit in France. His letters home were censored, and because of the things he was telling his father about the war in them, the French arrested and held him in custody for 3 months for his anti-war views and a suspicion that he was a spy. The experience left him shaken, but not stirred. He loved Paris and returned there often. He's considered one of the most important avant-garde poets of the 20th century. Best known for eschewing uppercase letters, he also formatted some of his poems so as to draw pictures of the lines. He was well-traveled, and after a trip to the Soviet Union, he became a Republican, and later an ardent supporter of Joseph McCarthy. He died September 3, 1962. Dr. Gwyneth Van Aden Walker, born March 22, 1947, started composing at a young age. She was an academic and is a graduate of Brown University in the Hart School of Music. She is a full-time composer, has a large body of work, and has probably never been locked up for anything. She adapted the text for White Horses from the E. E. Cummings poem, After All White Horses Are in Bed. The lines she selected suggest images of a lover with a white horse, the lady who is worshipped, and nighttime. It may be interpreted as a love song. The light and high piano introduction transports the listener from the present-day reality and into night in the past.
After all white horses are in bed, will you, walking beside me, my very lady, if scarcely the somewhat city wiggles in considerable twilight, touch now with a suddenly unsaid gesture lightly my eyes, and send life out of me, and the night absolutely into me. A wise and puerile moving of your arm will do suddenly that, will do more than heroes beautifully in shrill armor, colliding on huge blue horses, and the poets looked at them and made verses through the sharp light, cryingly as the nights flew.
She was born in New Hampshire in 1867, and it quickly became clear that she was not quite like other babies. By the age of 1, she's said to have been able to sing 40 different songs. And when she was 2, she could harmonize the lullabies her mother sang to send her to sleep. As a child, she composed 3 waltzes while staying at her grandfather's for the summer. Impressive, right? But what makes this particular story truly astonishing is that her grandfather didn't own a piano. Little Amy composed the pieces in her head and then played them when she returned home in the summer. By age 7, she moved on to performing Beethoven and made her concert hall debut at 16 in Boston's Music Hall. A critic from the time said, "It is hard to imagine a more positive critical reaction to a debut." Because of views about what was appropriate for a woman in the 19th century, Amy wasn't sent to Europe to study, which is what would have most certainly happened for a male pianist and composer at the time. Instead, she took lessons with local tutors and read all the books she could find about composition techniques and music history. Nevertheless, she persisted, and it paid off. By 1896, her Gaelic symphony became the first symphony by an American woman to be published, and it was premiered by the Boston Symphony Orchestra. But what happened to her piano playing? In 1885, Amy married Dr. Henry Harris Aubrey Beach, and one of the conditions of her marriage was that she stop working as a piano teacher and restrict her public appearances to 2 a year, with the profits going to charity. Amy agreed to this, but wrote, "I thought I was a pianist first and foremost." Her husband did, however, encourage her work as a composer. She had success with her Mass in E flat, first performed in 1892, and her piano concerto in 1900, with one modern-day critic calling it a colorful, dashing work. She was best known during her lifetime for writing songs for voice and piano and exquisite chamber works. In 1910, her husband died, and shortly after, her mother. So she went to Europe to rest and recover, and began performing across the continent. She returned to America in 1914 and started giving music lessons again. For the rest of her life, she used her position as one of the country's best-known composers, and certainly the best-known female composer, to encourage other women. She called her work pioneer work and said, "Music is the superlative expression of life experience, and woman, by the very nature of her position, is denied many of the experiences that color the life of man." Thankfully, that's no longer the case for composers today, and what's more, musicians and critics are rediscovering some great female composers of the past, like Amy, whose music has been neglected as a result of prejudices that deserve to be left